everybody. A very warm welcome from City Book Leaders. Today is a very special day again. It is Guru Purnima, and thanks to all the teachers, all the educators, and our parents for impacting our lives through their teachings. So, a very warm welcome to yet another session of our monthly series, Moms and Apes. We have with us Sushant Kalra. It's a parenting book club with City Book Leaders and Sushant Kalra, who brings in his wisdom and his years of experience in parenting through these sessions. He is in conversation with Dr. Shalini Advani, who is the director of Pathways School Noida. We all know Pathways, it's a modern age school with international board, and ma'am is really instrumental in driving the school. In fact, she was the principal of British school for over 20 years, and she was also the director educator at Learn Today. She was also a member on NCERT, where she was instrumental in the editorial board for the curriculum. She was also part of the committee which was driving reading initiatives in a lot of cities across India. She has a very fresh outlook to education, how interaction should happen with the kids. In fact, her publications are numerous. She writes on varied topics. One of the few interesting themes that I found was growing in a nuclear shadow and educating the national imagination. She brings in a fresh air of new age thinking to the whole domain of education, and she has a lot of talks in India and international conferences on how education could be refueled and rekindled with fresh energy. She is very passionate about how sense of humor and encouragement plays an important role in students' life. Her vision is that every staff, every school member, and every student should be encouraged for their growth and development. So we are very glad, Dr. Shalini Advani, that you took out time today. Thank you so much for being here. Sushant is here, and thanks, Sushant, for having this parenting book club. We can see a lot of books behind you, and Sushant is somebody who eats, lives, drinks, and breathes out of books. He runs a coaching institute for parents and teachers, Parwarish Institute of Parenting. He quit his corporate careers to follow his heart after 28 long years of experience, and now he is a full-time advisor, a coach, and a counselor on parenting. Sushant has a very wonderful course on how you can make your kids a superstar. I am also one of the parents who's certified by Sushant. He has trained thousands of teachers and parents. And over to you, Sushant, today for our very insightful, a very multi-dimensional session on how do we get a key into our child's world.
Thanks, Rashu, and thanks, Dr. Advani. When we spoke to ma'am about 15, 20 days back about this session, and the theme she recommended really touched a chord, and some books which I read about 20 years back when my son was just about 1 year old, brought them out for today. And I'm really telling you, it's going to be an amazing discussion today. And as a parent, one thing I can assure you, this 1 hour will take you through a roller coaster of what your child is. You can be as much close to your child as much as you know the child. I can promise you one thing. At the end of this session, what I'm going to say right now can be a shocker, but it's a huge door which will get open for each one of you, which is that we hardly know them. Sounds weird, sounds like breaking a myth right now, but be prepared. And you're going to go through this journey yourself. And again, our basis will be books, our basis will be the experience. But before I hand it over to Dr. Advani to pick up her first book and talk us through that and how she's been using all that in her journey as an educator, just a quick chain, Rashu, of how you introduced. I don't call myself an advisor. I don't even call myself a coach. I would call myself as a partner. Like we partner parents and teachers in nurturing every child's unlimited potential. So the partner is the word. I can't do it alone. It's only about us together. So over to you, ma'am. let's begin. And unlike the last, this is the second edition. The first was great. We took a lot of many books. We took 10 books last time, so we reduced the books this time, and so that we can have more meaningful discussions rather than walking people through a express. Today's session is going to be slow and deeper. So all the best and welcome.
Thank you very much, Rashu. Thank you very much, Sushant. It seems a particularly good day for us to be talking together. As Rashu, you mentioned Guru Purnima. And, apart from educators and people like us, of course, the original gurus of children, the first gurus are parents. So it really is a lovely intersection to have this gathering. So what I'm going to talk about is, in some sense, something that we all know, and I'm going to use a couple of books, which are books perhaps that some of you have read, and if not, you should read. They're both novels that I'm going to talk about, so they're not sort of guidebooks or help, but sometimes books gives you a wonderful insight and a reminder into your civilization and your world. And what I'm going to talk about is the particular world of children, not the world that we as adults see, not in the sense of what we think they should be doing or how we can help them, but one part of the world that they inhabit. So, when you ask people the first words that they associate with childhood, what comes up is words like innocence or play or happy childhood.
Fun.
And all of these are true, but they leave out something. Because in some senses as a society, and I don't mean Indian society, I mean as a world, we tend to sanitize childhood and adolescence and don't adequately recognize that it's a very difficult time. It's a time of uncertainty. There is aggression. There is secrecy against adults. Children deal with the fear of being outsiders. Children can be cruel. There's a loss of innocence. But somehow, as teachers and as adults, we tend to forget these difficulties and struggles in this time. And we've all been through childhood. But yet we tend to sanitize them when we look at our children. And it's like these experiences are not central to how we define childhood. So as a result, as parents, we don't always easily accept our child's desire for secrecy or for privacy and their active world in which they don't want adults to be included at all. And perhaps somehow we worry that accepting these darker moments of childhood in our children is a reflection on us as parents. Maybe there is a sense of slight failure as parents if we recognize that, as though their loss of innocence, which is inevitable, is somehow a failure of our own responsible parenting. But of course, the truth is that we can't fully protect our children. So a first step is to recognize that these darker periods exist. Even without fully knowing them or fully understanding what is happening, our role is to support them through it. And there's no better place to remind ourselves of this darker side of childhood than through books. The first book I'm going to talk about is a great classic, Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Golding was, of course, a Nobel Prize winner, and the book has sold over 10 million copies since it was first published. So, for those of you who haven't read it, just a few lines on what the book is about. It's about a group of schoolboys who are stranded on an uninhabited desert island. And they're really terrible and even terrifying experiences of managing themselves and governing themselves. As the novel progresses, you find that there's a boy, Ralph, who's fair and democratic and tries to organize them. He's a natural leader, trying to keep them safe. And with him, there is his friend, Piggy, who somehow doesn't quite fit in with the group. He's plump, he wears thick glasses, he has this funnily adult way of talking. He's very wise, he's very balanced. So there are these two with a few others. And in contrast, there is another group led by a boy called Jack, who's a very strong leader and a bully. And he wants everyone to follow what it is that he's saying. He's your local dada, if you like. And every school, every group of young people has that. The novel really explores the power of wanting to belong to a group and to the importance of thinking like the group, or what is called groupthink. This groupthink, thinking the same as everyone else, becomes more powerful than giving space for individuality. And free thinking, rational thinking, scientific thinking is stamped out by groupthink. The novel also suggests the enormous cruelty which children as a group are capable of, and the way that it can really crush the self of anybody who doesn't fit in. So you can see the enormous relevance that it has, not just today in our society, but also because it talks about the difficulties of maintaining a democratic decision-making process against a group mentality. The whole experience of not belonging, of not being treated fairly if you're different, is a part of the experience of children and adolescents. And Sushant, you talk a lot about this, I know in your different sessions, but this whole aspect of the importance that children have to feel of fitting in, of not being different. What happens when a child is bullied? What is their whole experience? Why is it that they're bullied? Why is it that they're so afraid to stand out? And it's only a few children who stand out for the right reasons, who are unafraid of giving their point of view and being sensible and being balanced. A lot of children choose the easier way of standing out, which is of being rebels, of being rude, or not, doing what the adults expect of them. And that too is this important aspect of the need to belong, the need to stand out. And these are important things for us as adults, as teachers, as parents to really engage with. So, so let me stop with this and bring you in, Sushant.
So, Shalini ma'am, a couple of questions, okay? I think on this entire book. So, this is set up on an island, as you said, a deserted island where they happen to be together and they do everything, like groupism, evil stuff, all that stuff is happening. How much do you think is survival, the basic instinct of survival, coming into play there in that whole setup? Any views on that?
So your voice broke up a little bit in between while you were asking. So were you asking about the survival instinct?
Yeah. So they're all marooned on this island, and how much is that play of survival instinct, survival of like the physical survival of your identity, like that whole survival instinct, which is so basic to human beings, to any living organism, by the way. How much is that playing? If you can put some light on that.
So, what Golden is exploring is a world that is our world is normally governed by rules. Rules and systems, which are what society has brought together.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole aspect of being on a desert island makes it possible for him to ask the question that what is human nature really? And if you take away all the rules, all the laws, all the expectations, then really what are human beings like? And so that survival aspect could, in this book, taking the example of this book, have been dealt with in two ways. One is the way of Ralph, which is to say that, let's all be together. Let's light a fire so that people can, maybe someone going past in a plane will see it. Let's take turns to speak, to make decisions because we're a lot of us. So that is one rational, law abiding society vision. And the other one, which is represented by Jack, says, it's all about power and who can get more of the meat. He uses fear, creating an atmosphere of fear so that people feel the need to band together under his leadership. So it's very interesting because it's a symbol of society at large, of course. But what we don't always think about is how, as a microcosm, it's also a symbol of what is happening in a class, what is happening in a school. And some of those things are, those larger social things are being played out even amongst a group of children in school.
Absolutely. Actually, so a couple of things, Salim, which was very beautifully brought out in the book and your talk, was that the innocence, the romanticism of a childhood, that it's all great, it's all fun, it's all enjoyable, it's all innocent. And that will get destroyed. And then parents thinking that if that gets destroyed, I am somewhere responsible for it, and holding yourself accountable and trying to protect their innocence, also protecting them, which is, in my view, an impossible task. Nobody can protect you except yourself. So your job is not to protect your child, but your job is to make sure your child knows how to protect himself or herself, because you never know what life's going to throw at them. So I want to move this conversation very beautifully, because this book talks about that they are marooned on an island and there's nobody there. They have to make their own rules. The book I wanted to talk about, and this is something which I read about 20 years back. I told you my son is 21. I read it when he was just about 1, I think maybe earlier. This book is called The Pressured Child. Again, happened to be picked up by chance again at a bookstore, authored by Michael Thompson. And Teresa Barker is another person who helped him do that. This is an amazing account of how this person transverses the life of children through classroom, not through his own eyes, but sits through the school, talks to children, communicates, and it has amazing account. The names of children and the places are changed because of confidentiality, but these are real issues. So a quick question before I talk about the book to all of you. All of you are parents, right? So how many of you asked this question to your child any time between, say, 3 o'clock to they sleep? How was school today? How many people have asked this question as a parent, and how many times and for how many years? Anybody's here who hasn't asked this question? How was school today? And just barring a few kindergarten children, maybe class 1, class 2, just take them off. What have been the answers? What did they say? And anybody can notice how it shifts from a kindergarten to a 3rd, a 5th, and then 8th, and 10th, and 12th. Our questions never changed, but the answer did. Okay, nothing special. Thanks, Venki. Anybody else? Normal, okay, one word, fine, good, अच्छा था, कल जैसा था यार, same, वही, regular, right? And how does that leave you? Absolutely, yaar. So remember, our journey actually is from that first 2 years of his life or her life, where it is about you knowing everything they do. The first 2 years of their life, you know exactly when they are getting up, when they're drinking, when they're pooping, when they're hitting a chair, when they're doing whatever. You were there 24/7, maybe photographing them and doing everything. And suddenly, the school starts and you are taken away from their life. And when these questions do not get answered, we get berserk. Right? It's not easy for a parent to get, "हाँ ठीक था, कल जैसा था." What does that mean? That was 8 hours of your life. How was it? And you have no access to it. And by the way, your access is, okay, how was my school? I'll come to that later, but I just want to quickly take a minute and read out of the introductory paragraph. And my request is, it may not relate to exactly to you, but listen to it carefully and see how much of this relates to you any point of time. So just a quick paragraph from him. It says, "One Friday afternoon, I picked up my son. His son name is Will. Will from his new school. It was late September, and he had just started 7th grade. For the first 3 weeks of the school, he had been pretty content. He liked his new friends. He had some welcoming teachers. He was a happy guy. All that changed at the end of the 4th week. When he climbed into the car that day, he looked whipped and discouraged. He threw his books across the seat and said, 'I hate my life.'" How many of you heard this on these lines? And they may not be using so parliamentary a language these days. But haven't we all heard it? "I hate my life. I don't want to live anymore. Why did you put me through this school? This school, dash, dash, dash." Heard of it before? And by the way, when we talk about, and it was an amazing book. And actually, if you ask me, the reason I could wanted to start off Parwarish and had a great relationship, and I can still say, do I know my children 100%? The answer is no. But a great relationship, how it could start even when he was one, was thanks to this book. So if I ask this question to all of you, okay, first, let me just walk you through rather than talking about the book. How was your school? Quick, a few of you talk about, how was your school? What do you remember of school? Just first words, whatever the first words are coming. Just as friends, fun, good, exciting, bunking, enjoying, right? Playing games, lunch breaks, those escapades where we enjoyed ourselves, all of that, right? But do you know what? This is not even the 10% of the truth. And I'm saying it to all of you without even knowing you. This is not even 10% of the truth. How did it feel to sit on those wooden or plastic benches for 7-8 hours? How did it feel to get up in the morning in the peak of summers, sitting without electricity, sweating in those classrooms, and you couldn't look around? When you see this, a teacher shouts at you. And at our point of time, hitting was allowed. We all got beaten up. We all got punished. How did it feel when your teacher actually gave you those marks and said, "Sushant, you scored 4 out of 20 again"? And I kept telling, "Ma'am, bolna mat." And you wanted her to be quiet and just quietly hand over your answer sheet to them. And then the whole walk back home, that I have to show this to my dad and I get it signed. How was that? How was it when you got bullied? How was it when you got pulled out for not attending the morning assemblies, or not singing your songs at the morning assembly, or not having your feet right and somebody just beat up a hockey on your feet saying, "Stand straight"? How did all that happen? How was examinations? We never talk about that. So what that book, The Lord of Lies, talks about in a maroon island. I'm sorry, we have Mrs. Advani right here, but isn't school the same? You've got to survive every day. Get up 14 years, get up in the morning, whether they slept late, whether they know that today they're going to face a teacher who's going to scold them. He hasn't done the homework, all of that. And we never talk about that with our own children. It's a 14-year hike. 14-year hike. Doing it every day, whether it is raining, whether it is 2 degrees outside, or whether it is 40 degrees outside. We always say, "Arey yaar, you should learn in life to do with people who are not good, do with people who are strict. Wo wali teacher achhi nahi lagti na, it's good. Yeah, you got to learn all that stuff." My question to you all, we all have those kind of people in our life, right? In our careers, in our jobs, in our businesses. Do we like it? What if somebody comes and says that to us? We want to bash that up. We would sock that guy out. Tu bakwas mat kar. I know what's happening with me. So this book is such a brilliant book which walked me through actually my life of what I went through my schooling, through my college. After the first year of my own college, I came back home and I blasted my dad. It was an engineering college. He did whatever he could to make sure that I get into engineering. He pushed me, prodded me, got me into a great college. And I said, "Aap mujhe wahan chhod ke aa gaye the." You know what I went through for a month? It was ragging and all that stuff happening. And I blamed him. Just imagine what he would have gone through and what I go through. He had no idea. I had no idea. So my request would be, guys, let's not romanticize childhood. Let's not talk about that 5-7% which was great and beautiful. It's a journey. And every caterpillar to become a butterfly has to go through the pain. You and I cannot protect the caterpillar, help them to grow out. So my request would be, let's get present to their world. Let's get present to their life. Let's get present to all that. And it's so beautifully done with actual anecdotes of children narrating what they're going through, and you really get present to your own life, and you can really get present to your child's life. And it's not easy. And who says parenting is easy? But it's fun. So over to you, ma'am. And thanks for starting this off. I could see such parallel between Lord of Flies and this. It's like the setting is different, but the picture was exactly the same. The movie was the same.
So I'm, before I got into my next book, I'm also going to sort of pick up from what you were talking about, just because it's always important for us as adults to look at all the nuances of this. As you so nicely captured for us, the whole institution of schooling had its problems. There was exams, there was teachers calling out your marks when you were doing badly, there was the fear of failure, there was the day that you hadn't done your homework yet again, and you knew you were going to be caught out, and you were just hoping somehow the teacher would forget to ask everybody's homework to be collected. There is all of those things. There's the fear of being in trouble and disappointing your parents. And a lot of those memories are of what the adult institutions do to children. And in addition to that, what I just wanted to also emphasize is the importance of remembering what children do to each other. And, and I know you were bringing that in also because you mentioned bullying and that aspect of it. But, the whole adult world with children, adult oppression times of children, is something that as a parent, you often have an insight into. That this has happened. What you often don't have any idea of is what children are doing to each other. And that is often a secret, more secret kind of world where your child doesn't tell you that. They'll tell you perhaps ki mujhe dant piti, from the teacher, or I got punished, or I got thrown out of class, or whatever. But what another child has said, and particularly today in an online world, what if somebody else is put onto Snapchat because of you, or those sorts of things, those are very, very painful and very powerful. And it's not something, Sushant, as you were saying, that, parents, we can't protect them. There's nothing we can do. So what is our entry point into that? What is the lesson that we parents have to think about? Is really one of just helping them, being there for them. And that is the best that you can do. So with that, let me go on to my second book. And this is a strange, disturbing book called The Go-Between. Not as many people may have read it as have read Lord of the Flies. So, again, let me start with a little bit of summary. It's about a 12-year-old boy called Leo, and he is invited and he goes to spend his summer holidays with his friend called Marcus. Now, Marcus is very rich, very upper class, unlike Leo. So, while Marcus and his family are very nice with Leo, he quickly recognizes that he's a social misfit. He's got the wrong clothes, his accent is slightly different. So, in one way, the novel is a recognition of the big issue of class difference. And I remember one student talking to me about how they very quickly size up another new student, what their English accent is like. In India, the English aspect is a big class differentiator. How cool, what is their cool quotient in terms of their dress and what they have. We don't often recognize how quickly children recognize this culture and class issue and how they suffer with it. Now, in the novel, Marcus has a very beautiful sister called Marian, and she's engaged to be married to a very suitable young man, a viscount called Winlove. But she's also having a relationship with a working class young man called Ted Burgess. Now, this is in an era before WhatsApp and phones and mobile phones. So she uses this little boy, Leo, to carry the notes and the messages back and forth between them, between herself and Ted. Hence the title of the novel, The Go-Between. Leo is desperately trying to fit in and to have value in this family. He loves the attention which Marian gives him, and he carries these messages back and forth, enabling this secret relationship. Eventually, the situation ends disastrously, as without realizing what he is doing, he takes Marian's mother to where they are meeting. And she sees them in a compromising position, and it ends up with Ted killing himself. Now, Leo is a very, like many young people, he's wanting to fit in. He's uncomfortable. He wants to please. And he doesn't quite understand the consequences of his action. So, of course, a novel is about a loss of innocence. And the story is told from the point of view of a much older Leo who's looking back and he's remembering the impact of that summer on his whole life. And the opening line of the novel, which is one of the most quoted lines, which we used with a twist in the information that went out to you. So the opening line of the novel is, "The past is another country. They do things differently there." Now, what lessons can we draw from this? Of course, there are times when your child may have done something genuinely very wrong. Although, of course, Leo didn't quite realize the consequences of taking Marian's mother to see what was happening. But maybe your child has been caught cheating or bullying or stealing, and there are major consequences. He's punished by the school. There's a major fallout. How does a young child, a young person, process this without it becoming the defining incident of the rest of their lives? What do we do to help them with that? Because children will do the wrong things. They'll do bad things, not just little naughty things. And those things happen. So first of all, we need to understand why it's happening. I mean, in Leo's case, there was the need to make up for the class difference and to fit in. What we need to do as parents is really talking and reflecting, learning to move beyond, understanding that yeah, there is a punishment that is due, that there is a certain element of restitution which you have to do, and then move on. You know what often happens as parents, and of course as principals, you deal with this, that something wrong happens, a child has done something wrong, and you take action because that is good for them. There is a restoration in making amends, in having to take the punishment. And parents will come and they will defend their child and they'll say, no, you're doing the wrong thing. How can you punish my child like this? And it takes a lot of energy to tell them this is good for your child. Your child needs the restitution. Sometimes it's good to say this is wrong and this is right, and you have to learn from that. But then you move on from that, because the past really is another country. You should be able to leave that behind and reinvent yourself beyond that. So, this whole aspect of right and wrong and how you manage that is one of the really important areas of childhood. Okay, so I'm stopping there again, Sushant.
Before you stop and I talk about it, but again a question. For these two books which you picked up, and typically you picked up these two books, and you have a huge career in education, supporting millions of children now, and educators and teachers. Like, how in your personal journey have these books impacted your style, your things in reality in school, with teachers, with parents, with children? Anything, if you can quickly take a couple of minutes and share.
So, one of the things these books and some personal experiences taught me, I was far from an ideal student. I went through a time when I was constantly in trouble. I went through a time when I was expelled from one school, and which I think is a really good experience for any principal or any educator. But then suddenly things fell into place. I changed. The world changed for me when I changed my school. And this whole aspect of having to have taken the punishment and moved on and reinvented from there is really what is an echo from this novel for me, for my life as well. What I have always tried to do in any school that I have been in and shaped is the whole notion of what school is. For some reasons, schools tend to be and see a big value in being institutional, where the most important thing is the rules. I believe that schools should be families. I mean, insofar as you can have families of 14, 15, 16, 1800 people, there are obviously limits. But even with the family, you have a rule. In a family, when a child does something wrong, they're punished, but they're loved. And I think that's really important as a model for schools. So you have to see, in schools you have the bullies like you have in Lord of the Flies. But you have to also try and replicate that environment of support and love and recognizing that things go wrong and children do the wrong things.
Wow, brilliant! Thanks, man. That's like, it takes a village to raise a child, and
Yeah, absolutely.
school is a village. With everybody together. Great, thanks. And a couple of things I just want to add, not reiterate what you said was so beautiful. We as parents make a very big mistake here of protecting our children from consequences of their action. They'll come and defend. यार इसने नहीं किया, इसको छोड़ दो, ये कर दो. But it's a very big life skill which we are depriving them of if we don't. Every action has a consequence. And if they don't learn this in childhood, they get a wrong notion of their life that actions do not have consequences. But when life really hits them, they don't know where to go. So children are developing that strange, incorrect notion that the consequences of my action is on my parents. But when life hits them in the productive life and they get out of their protection of the parents after about 16, 17, 18, 20, suddenly life hits them, and they are bereft of this huge life skill. Pretty critical, hurting, but the way you said it beautifully, that loving and consequences can coexist and need to coexist. Making a child go through consequences of a wrong act and at the same time having passion and compassion and love for them, both can coexist. This doesn't take care of this doesn't take it away. So thanks, beautifully, thanks for saying that. We
Yeah,
can
this
now
is from
talk.
Shalini ma'am's point of restoration. So Suneet Singh is asking, not every child is same. One way of restoration may not work with the other child, and how to figure out which way work for what type of child. I think it's a good question, intriguing one. Ma'am, over to you.
So I always believe that punishment on its own, if a child is arguing back or says, this is so unfair, if you're punishing like that, it is pointless. It's a waste of energy. The best punishment is when a child says, I hate being punished, but it's fair. And how do you get to that? You get to that because, as part of the punishment or restorative practice, you have to get them to reflect on what they have done, what they could have done differently, what avoided that. And at Pathways, this is one of our standard practices for any major thing that happens, where a child has to sit down quietly and just think about what it is that they did wrong, what they could have done differently, and why they did what they did. And when you go through that, then the punishment, I'd rather not call it a punishment as much as a restorative practice, is then it works because it changes them. If a child is going to go on, being punished and then doing the same thing and trying to get away with it and being punished again, what's the point? You're trying to shape human beings at this age, and you have to make them think about what they've done.
Great. Thanks, ma'am. Beautifully answered. And by the way, and just to add a bit to that, that communication and reflecting or maybe supporting that child in reflection first could be any which you will get to know. And you said beautifully that every child is different. Something can work for him, something will not work for him or the other. And even your two children, if you have two or more, one thing does not fit the other. So the only way out is reflection, communication, talking to them. Restoration comes later, definitely. But why and how of it comes first before we get into it. So I think just want to add one before I move to the last book and open it up for the other people is that whatever we've been talking for the last 40, 45 minutes, what we wanted to achieve for all of you today was that let's get an insight into what childhood and adolescence is really. It's not what we romanticize about. It's not what we always think about. It's not what we remember from our past. We only remember 10%, as I said before. And when we tell our children, oh, childhood was fun, this was great, I had so much of fun. And a child, imagine what we've been talking about, is going through a very different field. They just stop. They just stop. They down the shutters, and then you can bang your hand on those shutters and they will not let you in. And I'm sure each one of you heard this from your child. आप ना नहीं समझोगे. You don't understand me. You can't understand our world. And that line just shuts everything. They're not wrong there. To enter there, talk about what happened to you. Talk about that 90%, what we were talking about. That will give them an access. There's nothing wrong with them. They are also going through difficult situation. You also went through a difficult situation, and it's okay to go through a difficult situation. That will start opening up certain doors and windows so that your child starts to communicate and talk. It's going to be a very slow journey. I've been practicing it myself for 21 years now. But can I right now say that I know everything which is happening in my son's life? I must be fooling myself. I know a lot. and I keep driving. It's like a peeling of an onion. You keep peeling it, you keep peeling it, you keep peeling it, and there's no end to it. So start the journey. It's a very beautiful journey. But the point is, be true to yourself and to them. So just want to put one more book. A book is very controversial. A lot of people have given a lot of flack for this book rather than anything else. But just wanted to give you a perspective of it. It says, "Men are from Mars and women are from Venus." A very sexist book. I hate it. It creates gender stereotype, typical gender stereotyping. I don't believe in it. I hate it. I want to take it away from the world. But yet, this book was amazing because what it brought those thoughts in. So before I talk about the book, okay, so the book, why am I sharing it here? Because it's nothing to do with men and women. We're talking about children here. I say men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and we children are from Saturn. And we don't know. So if I ask you a few questions, I'll ask you a few words. Just tell me what do you mean by them, okay? What do you think the meanings of those words are? And just write it out. So the first word is cap. What do you understand with the word cap? English word cap, C-A-P. Anybody? What do you mean by word cap? Limit, the cap which you wear, a style, okay? What do you mean by the word called drip? Drip, D-R-I-P. Keep looking at it. What do you think about the word called drag? D-R-A-G. Pulling, dragging, right? Drag. What do you understand with the word called I am dead? I'm dead. No way out, dead, over and out. Okay, let me give you the meanings, okay, of what these words which are being used by your children and mine, by the way. Cap and capping means lying. When somebody lies, it's called you're capping. I am dead is talking about this thing was hilarious. Hilarious, not just funny, extremity of it. Then they call it I'm dead. Dragging means making fun of. Drip means you're looking very stylish. Check out my drip. That's my style. You want to know more? There's a emoji which has a skull. Okay, it has a skull. It's a very different skull. You know, it means funny. And the word they use to describe it is called DED. Now tell me, your English, my English, and our children's English, their language. Can you understand it? You'll go mad. If you look at their messages, they'll say, I'm dead. You'll say, oh my God, something is happening. He's under pressure. Actually, it's talking about having fun. It's hilarious. I enjoyed it. And these are just a few. Just a few. The way they will come to you and maybe your parents and say, Yaar, kya kar raha hai, yaar? You say, wait, this is not the way to talk to your father or a grandfather. And say, huh? What's wrong with it? And maybe they'll talk to you with your name, your first name, and you'll be like, aise nahi bolte, this is disrespect. And how boys and girls mix together and how they talk about where all those genders, the LGBTQI, and there are hundreds of genders, and we're talking about it, and we have no idea of it. Zero idea. We have no understanding of their word. So I didn't share this to scare you. I didn't share this to say, oh shit, you don't know anything about our children. But the whole idea of sharing this was, let's step back and really look at them as that they're not from the same planet. They have a different language, they think differently, they talk differently, they walk differently, they eat differently. Everything is different. You cannot use the same rules, the same thoughts, the same stuff are not applied there. And the only way out is to know it. And the way to know it is to talk and share and chat and understand. So coming back to the book, I just want to because I use the book and I'm believing the book, but what worked for me in the book, and I really worked is rather than looking at men and women differently, if I could substitute the word men with masculine and female, the women, with feminine traits, So I have feminine traits, and every woman has masculine traits. We all have traits. Those traits are in everybody. And if you can start reading the book from a different perspective. So a couple of things which I would want each one of you to pick up or today to share with you, that everybody has a different perspective. You are not everybody else. Even your twin is not you. How they think, they eat, they drink, they feel is very, very different. So the only way is to know the other person. Don't make a judgment on what they say and what they mean. So this is a very funny one, and I think a lot of spouses, a lot of parents on this will find it uh, a typical comment which all would have heard it. You don't love me does not mean you never loved me. Our house is always in a mess does not mean it's always in a mess. It only means it's looking messy right now. So rather than going for what a person is saying, if you can just sit back, listen, and ask, you will exactly know. So when somebody says, so my wife's a lot of times, the house is always a mess. And if I'm not conscious, I say, it's never a mess. I cleaned up this. Look at your room. Look at your almirah. It's worse than mine. Mine is better. And there it goes. Versus just setting me back and saying, okay, house is a mess. Right now, maybe she wants to rest. Maybe she wants something. Maybe she just wants the bed cleaned up. Let me ask, okay, what do you need? So the whole idea would be, can we go into their world? Can we go into their world? And the route to go into their world is to ask. So this is what I wanted to share today. And Rashi, over to you. So.
Yes, thank you, Sushant and Pam, for opening up the world in a completely different swirl. Uh, there are a few questions, but before that, I'd like to just share one of my favorite paras from the book. When a man can listen to a woman's feelings without getting angry and frustrated, he gives her a wonderful gift. He makes it safe for her to express herself. The more she is able to express herself, the more she feels heard and understood, and the more she is able to give a man the loving trust, acceptance, appreciation, admiration, approval, and encouragement that he needs. So let's leave the man and the women aside, but I think it goes for every human being. And in Sushant's course, they keep reminding us, just ask, just ask. They have a good word for the child, but I'll not reveal the secret here. But they keep telling me, ask the child, ask the person. So while we have the same constituents of the five elements we are made of, but there is so much of chemistry which goes on in everybody's life. And the simplest is to just ask. And when ma'am was sharing that we don't get to know what kids are going through by their peers, by their kids. My daughter comes back when she was 3 years old. She said, Din acha nahi tha. Myra didn't play with me. It's a friend's name. And tidbits like this, which aggregate in a long period of time, which we don't have access to, and then they show up. And at that time, we are not able to relate that where did this drift from our awareness into their world. So that's what a wonderful deep dive into their world. There is a question, Hariharan says, why is it that grandparents are perceived to be doing right things and not the parents?
Actually, I won't agree with it, but they appear to be, because I'll tell you what, the role of a parent is to bring up a child and you want the best. And this is exactly what I said to my own parents. That when I used to make this mistake, I used to get a slap on my face. When my daughter does that, you have all the love and care and say, beta kuch nahi hota. So the role of a grandparent on a lighter side is to spoil your child. They did all the mehnat, all the difficulty, all the things which you're going through, should I, shouldn't I, all those dilemmas, they did it with you guys. Right now they're free. They want a freedom. They want to do whatever they couldn't do with their own child, pampering them, spoiling them. That's what they do. And they become the best people at home because the children want to go to them and you become the enemies or the bad cops. So it's nothing right or wrong with them, but it's just their love and care, something which they couldn't afford to do with you. They're planning to do with their grandchildren.
On everybody's behalf. We've spoken about it, but what is that precisely the skill set that, or I think it's a muscle that parents can develop to keep peeping into their kids' world. So what is that one muscle, ma'am and Sushant, that we as parents need to continuously work upon?
So, if I will start, I'll say first of all is the acceptance that you can't. That you can't peep into every corner of your child's world and you should not try to. And it is important, that's what I go back to, that it's important to recognize children also need their own secrecy, they need their own privacy, they even need their own suffering to some extent, because you can't change it, you can't manage it. But if along with that, the muscle that you develop as a parent is that they feel that you are a safe space to come to, that you won't try and solve it for them, that you won't always try and get them to do it in the way that you think would be right to solve it. That if this teacher has said this, you go back and you tell her that, and you tell this friend of yours this if they've said that to you. You can't let a child also think about what they're comfortable with managing or with processing a difficulty, and just be the voice of advice. That helps them a lot in these dark spaces. Of course, there are other spaces where you will be an assertive parent. But in these dark spaces, tread very softly.
Sure.
Just adding one more element to it, which is very, very tough for parents. So I would want each one of you to think of it, practice it. It's not going to come in a day, but keep it in your back of your mind. Very powerful. So whenever we see our child in a negative emotion, what we call a negative emotion, sad, crying, angry, upset, we all make that emotion wrong. And we want to fix it for them. All emotions are normal. Happiness and sadness are equally important. Happiness does not mean you will never be sad. Happiness is the ability to take on sadness without getting mentally or emotionally sick. Crying is as important. Anger is as important. We make anger wrong all the time. If the person defending your country on the border is not angry to the extent that he has rage, he will not be able to pull the trigger. So it's as important. So when your children are showing the disempowering emotions, I won't call it negative, have the courage to listen to them, have the courage to make it okay, and have the courage of not solutionizing at that point of time. They have to go through that to grow. This will be the toughest, but I would say the only way out. Start practicing it, and it'll do a world of good to you and your child.
Yep.
Thanks, Sushant. Just one question and we'll wind it up with this.
Yeah.
What to do when a 9-year-old says you never help him, while as a parent you're trying to make him independent? This is by Anju Shrivastava.
Absolutely. Anju, good question. Simple answer, but again, not easy. What we've been saying since last 1 hour is chat it out, talk it out. You don't want to help him? Perfectly fine. My vote goes to you. Let them fall, let them get up, and they will get up. And a 9-year-old falling versus a 19-year-old falling, I would rather have a 9-year-old fall and learn. So talk to them. Tell them why you're not doing it. Tell them why do you think you're not doing it. You want them to be independent, and use your magic wand. Okay, you have a magic wand called I know you can do it. So just say that.
I come in with a personal anecdote, and that's based on your example, Sushant. Which is, as a parent, you have to always believe that you will never get it right. And once you decide that, it really takes a lot of pressure off you. And if I can give a personal anecdote, my daughter, when she was in the 12th class, taking that board exam or before that, one day she said to me, every other parent is telling their child, study, study, study. You never tell me to do that. Do you know how much pressure that puts on me? So, what can you do? As a parent, you will never get it in a way that will fully win your child's approval at that point. They'll look back and they'll think you're a wonderful parent, but at that point, there are going to be times of failure. So accept that. That's also a good secret of parenting.
Brilliantly said.
Yeah, indeed, it is a lot of pressure off our shoulders because we try to be perfect. That we are like that fairy who will just pick up the wand and do everything for our kids. So,
Yeah.
Shant,
Actually,
yeah,
sorry, a lot of people are asking that
asking.
question.
I was just about to ask you any tips on detoxification from digital world for kids.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
before Sushant mentions, there is a very powerful series by Sushant. It's a video series which talks about how you can do it. But over to you, Sushant.
yeah. So it can't be a tip thing. It's a process. We really need to understand first the damage of screens far more than just eyes and your physical health. It's beyond and more. Understanding that how do you communicate, how do you build it together with your children? It can't be one side. How that communication happens and how do you support them in weaning it off? What we had done was a lot of parents have been talking about it. We've created a small video series. Uh, this is on an LMS, a learning management system. Originally, it was priced at about 4,999. Just to make sure that everybody gets it and gets it at inexpensively. It's right now priced at 149. The whole idea is to just give it to everybody. My request would be share it with as many people as possible. It's about 35 minutes in total, about 7 videos of 5 minutes each. Don't just see the series, walk through it, uh, go through the process, and you can even have your child watch it together. So don't give it to your child and say, "Do it." It doesn't work. Maybe do it together, maybe watch it first yourself and go through the process. It will take some time. Keep following it for next 15, 20 days and you will have a breakthrough.
And I'd like to just share another information. Sushant and the Parwarish Institute runs a very powerful course on how you can make your child a superstar. It enables you to nurture the expansiveness, the no limitness of your child every day and help him experience his full potential. We'll share those details. It's on the 1st and 8th of August, 2 Saturdays. And you get the complete toolkit to how you can get wings to your kids. So that's another series by Sushant. Thanks, Sushant. I think we've done with all questions. It was wonderful. I'd like to close with another quick 4 lines by Robert Louis Stevenson. It says, "A child's thought. At 7, when I go to bed, I find such pictures in my head. Castles with dragons prowling round, gardens where magic fruits are found. I find so clearly in my mind at 7 when I go to bed." Interestingly, the world changes for kids every new day. And like we've been talking, there are different facets to it. Fun is one facet, but yes, a closer look and a deep inquiry into their world would really take us far into our relationship and build the highway which you can always bank, which is communication. So Sushant keeps reminding us, connect before you correct. So once the highway is there, then everything is possible. It was such a wonderful session. Thanks to Shalini ma'am. I'm really glad you gave us this theme. And because you always keep talking about things which are more visible, and this was something which really led us thinking. A lot of people have related to what has come out from this session and interaction. So wonderful having you, Dr. Shalini. Thanks, Sushant, like always.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed that conversation. Thank you, Rashu. Thank you, Sushant, very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all the wonderful audience. Namaste. Look forward to see you for upcoming sessions on Ma. Thanks, Sushant, for bringing in so many books, interactions, and wonderful guests like Dr. Shalini this time. Look forward to meet you again next month.
Yeah.
Have a very happy weekend. Another announcement is we completed 3 years at City Book Leaders with all the wonderful audience around, with all the love and encouragement. It wouldn't have been possible without all of you. So thank you for being there. Namaste.
That's right.